I miss you guys. I wish we could be back in school right now, but we'll have to just hang tight for right now. So I hope you're excited to do a little bit of art today. Today what we're going to be thinking about doing is a mixed media collage. So again, basically a collage is where you could take a bunch of different materials and you can just glue it onto one surface. So again, when I say mixed media, what that means is that you're using a lot of different types of materials. So if we were just using paper, then it'd be a paper collage. But if you start bringing in different materials like this plastic knife or this plastic fork, all those other good things, then it becomes mixed media because, again, they're not the same material. So what you're going to be thinking about looking for are just, it could be something that's like considered trash or recyclables. It could be cardboard, paper. It could be maybe just something that you really don't need anymore. I'm going to show you a few different examples of stuff that I just found around my place that you can always use. But anyway, so keep that in mind. We're going to be working on this. And again, thank you guys for sending in some of your pictures. If I could get some more, that would be great. So, okay, moving on. Bye.
So here's some materials I collected, some which I used and some which I didn't in this project. So again, you can see there's our straws, there's cardboard boxes, maybe that had food in it, things you got for free, advertisements, scrap pieces of paper, random things you found around the house, magazines, bottle caps, wrappers, post-it notes, fake flowers, tin foil, all that good stuff. You're going to want some scissors, and you're also going to want some Elmer's glue and a glue stick. Again, you don't have to have both, but I think it's kind of nice to have both if you do have them. And you'll also want to get a box. It could be a cereal box. It could just be a slightly bigger box. But basically, we're going to use the back of it or one side of it to be kind of like our base that we're going to glue everything else onto. So it's a little bit thicker than paper, so it's a bit sturdier. So grab a pencil and you can draw any shape that you want. I decided on an oval. But again, it could be a circle, it could be a rectangle, it could just be a square. It's just going to be the base. And again, if you don't like it, you can always change it. This step is completely optional, but if you want, you can always grab some construction paper or something else that you have, and you can trace your shape onto it, so then you can have a colored background. So basically, we're just going to cut this out, and then we're going to glue it onto our base. Make sure that it fits. I had to flip it around a few times to make sure I had it on right. And I would say if it's a bigger piece, then I would use the liquid glue and just do enough, a little bit around the edges, a little bit in the middle. Because again, you don't want to put too much on and then have it be a big gluey mess. If you find any little glue spots on your table, you can always grab a tissue and just wipe it up really quick, or you can always put some newspaper down first so you don't have to worry about it getting on your table. So next, what I'm going to show you is how you can take a material and how you can cut it up or change it a little bit to kind of suit your taste or suit what you want to do. So again, you could always cut it in half. You could cut it in tiny little pieces. That's never a bad idea. Again, you could even crumple it up into like a flower or like a cool crumple shape. That also works as well. You could always glue that down too. We're going to put those off to the side. And then the next thing that I have was just this like coupon that was free, but I like the, orange paper that it's on. So you could always cut those pieces out. You could do the same thing from like a newspaper or some other paper that you find that no one really needs. I also have this Snapple wrapper that I was attracted to because I just really like the color of it. So again, think about looking for colors that attract your eye when you're collecting some of your objects too, or just cool patterns or prints. So I also have this fake flower that I just didn't need anymore. So I decided that I was going to take it apart. So again, be careful. You don't want to poke yourself or anything. But I decided that I would cut up some of the petals and just because I thought that also the pink would go good together. So that's another thing to think about is that you could always get some materials that have a similar color together, and that could end up making your collage look like it flows together well. Also, you could get a magazine. I found this pretty cool picture in one magazine that I had, so I ripped it out, and then I just cut it out. I liked the orange and the red and the blue. I also decided to save some of the pieces that had the writing on it because I thought that would be kind of a cool pattern that I could use it to make it into, so I decided that I would keep that and not throw it away. There's also tin foil. You can always crumple it, and then you can always try to flatten it out, and that kind of creates a cool texture. Or you can crumple it into some pretty interesting shapes. It could be a random abstract shape, or it could be one that you want to look like something. It's up to you. But those are just some ideas to get your thinking. Also, I had some bottle caps from a few different types of bottles. So keep an open mind when you're looking for materials. So with all my materials laid by the side for the moment where I can see them, I just decided that I would take one of my larger pieces, which is like the Snapple wrapper, and I would try cutting it up and thinking about how I could maybe be using it. So again, you could always just cut it up in really random shapes and then, rearrange it, rotate it, or you could rip it like I'm doing with the text pieces here. Again, you can always think about layering, overlapping pieces on top of each other. One really important thing I want you guys to notice that I'm doing is that I'm not gluing down anything yet. I'm laying it all out first, and that's one of the most important parts of collage. The first place you put your paper down probably won't always be the best or best looking place for you to put it down. So again, that's why you lay it out first, and then as you are liking what you're doing, then you can start gradually gluing. But again, lay it out and make sure that you're trying to experiment in different ways that you could arrange some of your pieces. In my opinion, one of the most fun parts about collage is that you are really able to experiment a lot. You're able to cut pieces up, rotate them, do all this crazy stuff to them, and just kind of see how it looks along the way. And again, until you glue anything down, you're basically free to play around with it however you want. One random thing too is that I started gluing down some of my pieces. Sometimes instead of using my fingers to press down on the piece that already has glue on it, I will use the glue cap sometimes and just use that to kind of flatten out the piece a little bit. So then my sticky fingers aren't getting all over all the nice paper that I'm trying to glue down. If you're afraid of forgetting which pieces you need to glue down where, then you can always take a photo of it if you need to on your phone or your iPad or whatever you have, just so you can remember how you laid it out. I didn't necessarily do that here. It's really not something you have to do. You could always just kind of move your pieces just a little bit off of the paper, so you kind of remember in general where it was. But I mean, again, look, the great thing about collage is that even if you don't put it in the same place you meant to, no one's really gonna know. I know I've already told you guys this, but remember, after you're gluing, make sure everything's completely glued down. You don't want to have a lot of really big pieces that are coming off. Next, I decided to take some of my foil that I had crinkled up and that I had re-flattened back out again, and I decided to cut them into some circles. So one thing to think about too when you're cutting up your materials is that you could always use very sharp lines, you cut them with a lot of points, or you cut them to be very smooth and very rounded. So it's kind of fun to use both of those, both very sharp shapes and also very rounded shapes. So then I got my magazine photo out and decided to use only a part of it. So I cut it into strips and then played with arranging how I could evenly space out those strips close together, but to where it looked kind of like a pretty cool design. So I liked that, so I decided to take one strip at a time and glue it down so I wouldn't have to try to remember where I'd put them beforehand. Then I took my foil pieces that I had put to the side a little bit ago and this again tried to play around with where I could put some of the pieces to where it would look cool. So again, I tried to space them out pretty well, and once I was happy with it, then I decided to go ahead and glue it down. And again, with foil, I would not use a glue stick, I would use liquid glue. Then I took some more pieces of my magazine paper, cut them into more strips, and thought about doing another design that didn't look identical to the other one that I had done, just for funsies, just to see how it would go. So I finally found something that I felt pretty good about, kind of like a flower or like a sun shape in a way. So then I glued it down with my glue stick. And so then after that, I took some of my petals from earlier and I played around with how that would look, and where I could put it, what would be good to wear. Again, it's just all about experimenting and just trying to see what you like the most. So I figured out that I wanted to use some of my bottle caps, again, that I had on the side earlier. So I decided to play around with where I could put some of them. So one thing to keep in mind is that just because you collect all of the materials does not mean that you need to use all of the material. Because, I mean, even things that I cut up earlier, you haven't really seen me use, or things that I showed you earlier. But I could have used it, but again, don't have to. Also, as you're going through, if you feel like you need to cut out more pieces of a material used earlier just to make it look better. I mean, again, feel free to do that. I ended up having to cut out an extra piece of foil to use one of the bottle caps that I wanted to use also. And when you're gluing your bottle caps, again, you want to make sure you put a pretty decent amount of glue on there and make sure that you're pressing down, especially with it. So, I mean, with anything that's a little bit thicker, you're going to want to use the liquid glue. So as I was working on it, I decided that the flower petals would be my last material that I would use. So I started laying them out, seeing what would look good where. I felt like some of them were maybe a little bit too big, so I decided to cut a few of them in half and kind of like round out their shapes a little bit, which I think sort of helped with not having it look like it was just overpowered by all the petals. Then I decided to glue them on, and again, I used the liquid glue because these petals are more of a fabric. As a side note, if you want to just go out in nature and find some things like leaves or actual real flower petals, then that's also not a bad idea. Using things from nature like sticks or twigs is also a pretty cool material to use as well. Whatever you can find, really. And voila, there you go. My own mixed media collage where I used foil, paper, wrappers, bottle caps, fake flowers, and cardboard. So that's always fun. And again, I could have added more to it. I could have glued a few more pieces on, but just stop when you feel like it's a good place to stop. It's really easy to overdo it sometimes, I think, on collage, so just keep that in mind. Also, make sure that you clean up all of your mess. One other thing I want you guys to take note of is that you'll notice that some of my pieces are coming off of the edges, right? So if I wanted to, I could turn it around and I could cut all those pieces off, but I thought it kind of looked more interesting to have them hanging off. But again, it's really up to your personal preference. Again, you could turn it upside down, see what it looks like from the side. Just play around with it. But I would love to see what you guys come up with. Please send me pictures. Hope you enjoyed it. Okay, I'll talk to you next week. Bye.